Iran's military might continues to keep the world guessing. No one truly knows the full extent of its arsenal, and the latest strikes on Israel has proven just how dangerous the uncertainty can be. According to the US, Iran has the largest ballistic missile inventory in the Middle East. From drones to cluster bombs and Fatah missiles, Iran is bleeding Israel with a highly capable range of weapons.
What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this, two nations are exchanging fire that could trigger a global war, not a movie, not a drill. In June 2025, the world came closer to nuclear escalation than it has in decades. This war didn't start with troops crossing borders. It started with whispers, satellites, and the hum of uranium spinning in the dark. In the space of 3 days, over 300 missiles were launched, hypersonic weapons that outpaced the Iron Dome, drones swarming in like locusts, cities lit up like war zones, and innocent families caught in the crossfire. But this story, it's not just about military strikes. It's about the psychology of nations, about secrets buried beneath nuclear bunkers, and decisions made in rooms you'll never see. If you want to understand the war between Iran and Israel, not just the headlines, but the fear, the firepower, the future, this is the video you've been waiting for. To understand why missiles are flying right now, you need to rewind, not just months, but years. Iran and Israel have been locked in a shadow war for decades. Cyber attacks, assassinations, drone strikes. But the fuse? It was nuclear. Iran's pursuit of uranium enrichment.
That Iran was years away, as much as 3 years away, from not only obtaining a nuclear weapon, but developing the system meant to deliver it at a target of its choosing.
Has haunted Israel like a ghost in the room. And in 2025, it wasn't a ghost anymore. Western intelligence leaked that Iran had quietly reached 90% uranium purity weapons grade. That's the point of no return. And for Israel, a red line drawn in blood.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival.
So, on June 13th, before dawn, Israel struck. 100 coordinated air raids targeting Natanz, missile silos in Khorramabad, the Revolutionary Guard's drone hubs. They called it Operation Rising Lion, but it was more than a military campaign. It was a message. We will not wait for a mushroom cloud, and at that moment, history didn't just bend, it cracked. It didn't take long. Just hours after Israeli jets returned home, Iran answered, not with a statement, with steel, with fire, with missiles. Iran launched over 150 ballistic missiles in one wave targeting Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, Ashkelon, airports, military depots, power grids. And this time, they weren't just guessing. They used their most advanced weapons. Fatah-1, hypersonic. Mach 15, virtually unstoppable. Qasem-Basir, maneuverable re-entry. Think of a snake in the sky. And drones. Swarms of Shahed 136, cheap, smart, and meant to overload Israel's air defense. Israel scrambled. Sirens howled. Interceptors launched. Over 80% of incoming threats were shot down, but not all. One missile slammed into Rishon LeZion. Another hit a neighborhood in Herzliya. Casualties mounted. People screamed in stairwells. Cell service collapsed, and every Israeli knew this wasn't over. Iran named the retaliation True Promise 3, a name meant to sting, to remind the world this is bigger than revenge. It's a legacy. It's survival. It's religion, history, empire, all colliding in the skies. It's easy to talk about missiles, technology, airstrikes, but war is never about machines. It's about people. In Tehran, families fled high-rises, grabbing what they could: diapers, ID cards, a Quran. By nightfall, over 330,000 Iranians were evacuating the capital. Some walked, some drove, some just waited. In Israel, it was no different. In Tel Aviv, families spent the night in stairwells. Schools turned into bomb shelters. Power flickered. Cell towers failed. Parents whispered bedtime stories over sirens. Mothers held their breath every time the Iron Dome fired. This wasn't about religion or politics to them. It was about staying alive. We heard a blast. I thought it hit our building. My son hasn't spoken since. Tehran resident, my brother's bakery is gone. He was inside. Herzliya local. They told us to evacuate. But where do you go when the missiles are everywhere? Elder and calm. By June 15th, more than 400 Iranians were confirmed dead: scientists, soldiers, students. In Israel, 24 lives lost, hundreds wounded, the majority civilians. And the question no one dared say aloud, how much worse could this get? The world didn't sleep that night. What began as a regional war was threatening to turn global. The United States immediately stepped in, not with boots on the ground, but with might, intelligence, airspace support. And behind the scenes, plans were drawn to target Iran's remaining missile infrastructure if the war spiraled further. But it wasn't just America. Russia and China condemned Israel's strikes, accusing it of violating international law. And while their words were diplomatic, their message was clear: don't drag us into this. Germany urged renewed nuclear negotiations. The UN called for ceasefires. But no one dared move fast enough to stop the blood already spilled. Middle Eastern countries, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, reacted. Mideast maps showing ripple effects. Turkey declared its support for Iran's right to defend itself. Saudi Arabia, caught in the middle, quietly reinforcing its air defenses, fearing a regional collapse. Meanwhile, in cyberspace, the war had already gone global. Iranian-linked hackers targeted Israeli banks and infrastructure. Israeli cyber units hit oil depots and command servers in Iran. The battlefield had no borders anymore. Oil markets shook. Evacuations began. And everywhere from New York to New Delhi, people asked the same thing. Is this the beginning of something bigger? On June 16th, Israel took the gloves off. The airstrikes became deeper, bolder, and far more dangerous. Using intelligence gathered over years and real-time satellite feeds from American assets, Israel launched waves of deep strike missions. Their targets? Khojar, Iran's main ballistic missile production site, Natanz, again, this time more aggressively, and a little-known underground command bunker near Shiraz. Believed to be coordinating Iran's missile operations, Iran fired back surface-to-air missiles, radar sweeps, and electronic warfare. But Israel's jets were already gone. The damage? Catastrophic. Among the dead were at least 4 senior IRGC commanders, dozens of elite scientists, and hundreds of support personnel. It was a surgical decapitation strike, and it hit Iran's morale like a hammer to glass. But victory is never clean in a war like this. With every successful strike came new threats. Iran warned that it would unleash its full arsenal if Israel attacked Tehran directly. And Israeli officials? They didn't blink. He said, quote, "We will not live under the shadow of annihilation. We will act again and again until that shadow is gone." The message was clear. This war had moved beyond tactics. It was now about ideology, pride, and survival. Not every weapon explodes. Some just whisper lies until the truth disappears. While missiles lit up the skies, another war was burning across screens. A war of stories, images, disinformation. In Iran, state television broadcasted heroic counterstrikes, claiming they destroyed Israeli nuclear plants. In Israel, social media filled with rumors of Iran using nuclear-tipped missiles are also false. But here's the thing. Truth didn't matter. Fear did. Every siren felt like the last. Every silence felt worse. People stopped trusting headlines, governments, even each other. Governments cracked down hard. In Iran, dissent was labeled treason. In Israel, security zones expanded. Censorship became patriotism. And in the shadows, cyber cells from both sides kept the confusion boiling. Hospitals were hit physically and digitally. And as chaos grew, so did the silence of reason. Because in this war, you didn't just fear bombs, you feared not knowing what was real. And that distortion is what made this conflict more dangerous than any before. Because missiles can be intercepted, memories cannot. The U.S. moved first. President Trump didn't just support Israel, he warned Iran of unconditional consequences. American intelligence helped track Iranian missiles. Air defense radars were fed into Israel's Iron Dome, and quietly, U.S. bombers repositioned in Qatar and Diego Garcia. Congress debated military intervention. Senators warned against another Middle East war. But military commanders? They were already planning for one. Russia condemned Israel's airstrikes and called them a violation of international law. But they did more than talk. They moved air defense batteries into Syria. They warned NATO not to interfere unilaterally. And Russian surveillance aircraft began tracking U.S. movements. For Putin, the war was an opportunity to expand influence in the Gulf and to weaken Western unity. But they walked a tightrope supporting Iran without triggering direct conflict with Israel or the U.S. Then came a surprise. Pakistan, publicly neutral, began quietly mobilizing. Officially, they called for peace. Unofficially, they opened channels with Iran. Iran is a neighbor, a trade partner, a fellow Shiite power, and Pakistan's population was boiling. Rallies erupted in Karachi and Lahore, demanding retaliation for Israeli aggression. The government couldn't ignore it. While Pakistan never fired a shot, their presence changed the map. Suddenly, the war wasn't just Middle Eastern, it touched South Asia too. Turkey called Israel's actions state terrorism and activated emergency defense drills near its eastern border. Saudi Arabia and UAE stayed eerily quiet, worried about Houthi retaliation or oil field sabotage. European nations scrambled jets to defend NATO airspace, not from missiles, but from chaos. China called for peace talks, but used the moment to expand influence in Iran's energy sector. One war, but everyone moved. Because if the region explodes, the world bleeds. Wars don't start because of a single missile. They start with moments, stacked on top of each other like dominoes. This wasn't just about uranium, it was about history. The wounds never healed. Iran and Israel have been shadowboxing for decades. Cyber attacks, bombings, assassinations. But in 2025, the tempo changed because both nations were cornered. Iran crippled by sanctions, hungry for pride, and surrounded. Israel is fearful, divided internally, and unwilling to take one more risk. This war didn't come from nowhere. It came from a world that stopped talking, a world that let fear and silence fester. Diplomatic pause, G7, and China force emergency negotiations. A fragile ceasefire is brokered. Escalation, a single misfire or assassination triggers full regional war. Hezbollah joins. Syria destabilizes. World War III, US and Russia get pulled in. The Gulf explodes. Global collapse begins. Right now, the future is on a knife's edge, and what happens next will define the century. This isn't just news, it's people. People like you, families like yours, in Tel Aviv, in Tehran, in New York, in Karachi. So ask yourself, if the next missile had your name on it, would you still scroll past? Because silence is a weapon too. And this war, it belongs to all of us now.